Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Bite Size HR, powered by Lutuan. I'm your host, Loic. Today, a special episode specifically on a title that I take at heart, and I had the chance of discussing with our guests, which we'll be introducing in just a second. But the title of today, the Odyssey, a new manager, overwhelming to fielding empowered. To be able to understand this, we have a special guest today. Thank you so very much to Sriparna Sen, former general manager of human resource at Great Learning, with an impressive career spanning with 17 years in ITS, consulting and edtech. Sriparna had key roles at top-tier organizations like KPMG India, which I'm sure our audience is quite familiar with that company, and Tata Consultancy Services. In other words, a deep expertise in the HR industry, specifically in transformation, leadership development, talent management, and therefore a perfect person to discuss this topic, which is the often challenging transition from high-performing employee to effective manager, particularly in the context of diversity and inclusion. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Loic. It's a sunny afternoon and I'm loving being here and looking forward to the exciting talk between us.
And I hope we won't need to wear our sunglasses very soon, but there might be a chance. Apologies to our audience watching on YouTube, but yeah, it's quite sunny today. So yeah. Anyways, for today, so as mentioned, the topic and the title of today, therefore we need to have a funnel type of approach to do so. Let's start off with better understanding the transition challenges. The first question being, research indicates that 60% of new managers fail within 24 months of their new role due to the lack of proper training and support. Based on your extensive experience, what are the most significant challenges that new managers face when transitioning from individual contributors to leaders, and how can organizations better support them during the critical period?
Thank you, Loic. Very important question to start our podcast with. There is no research without evidence. And I have seen enough evidence in my career span. In the first 2 years of a manager, they always fail if there is a lack of training and support. Now, imagine why a person becomes a manager. A person becomes a manager because he gets promoted to that role. And the person gets promoted to that role, he or she was amazing as an individual contributor, was very good in aligning his goals or her goals with the organization goals, was an effective communicator, was able to lead a team or at least show some kind of a positive strength when it comes to people management. Now the person becomes a manager and the person immediately has to lead a team, align others' goals to company's goals, delegate work, not do micromanagement. So can you see the change which happens from not being a manager to being a manager, and for why the person got promoted and what he or she has to do now? So this gap, who's training them on? This gap, nobody in the organization is preparing them for. So all the organizations who have a robust training, management, competency-based approach, those organizations succeed in planting the new managers in a successful way to move forward.
Thank you very much. A very detailed answer in regards to that. And I agree, it is quite a surprising jump to even see still happening today as well. And that kind of what brought us to this discussion in the first place, when in the introduction, when we first had the chance of talking, we were both surprised to still hear about managers suddenly being put in a manager role without any particular background story or actual constructive surrounding to put them in that position in the first place. So yes, very valid. And I think this is a good way to bring us to the second question, which is supporting developing effective leadership programs, which are going to help as well managers on this one specifically, right? But a study by the Brandon Hall Group found that organizations with a strong leadership development programs are 86% more likely to respond rapidly to changing market conditions. Can you share the key components of the leadership development programs you co-founded at Essentia Insight, and how these programs address the gaps in managerial guidance?
Again, a good question. I started Essentia Insights back in the days when startup culture in the place where I started, which is Bangalore in India, was just coming up. And it was kind of revolutionizing every way of looking at employees and particularly managers. And I'll tell you how. Um, they wanted leaders, they wanted high energy leaders who have balanced approach. So it's easy for a stable organization to create such leaders from within or hire from outside. But for a startup environment, there is always a constant struggle for high revenue. So when a person has to balance both, right? One is their individual contribution and manage their teams,
Mm-hmm.
then a lot of times they get demotivated and burnt out.
Yeah.
So when these kind of things are happening, then you really need a leadership development program which is on some pillars which are going to support them. So I strongly believe in the 5 C's, which I painstakingly built, and that is communication, collaboration, change, confidence, and courage. These are the 5 C's which are effective to create an amazing leadership development program. And what are the gaps which I really tried to cover with these 5 C's? I, we tried to create an inclusive environment where a new manager can thrive, align organizational goals with individual goals and team goals. So the how and when of it, all these 5 C's help to attribute that. Creating self-aware leaders. So when you're prepared for change, you are more self-aware. You know what to do yourself. So it helped in that. Excellent advices and framework on difficult conversation. You know where the new manager fails so maximum times
Yeah.
is to convey difficult feedback. You're not doing well. You can do this better, etc.
Yeah. I love that last part because we've heard it as well in the previous episode of regarding we all crave feedback, but we're not willing to give it because we're automatically scared that it's going to be necessarily negative. But as you mentioned, it is there, specifically in this topic, is a very constructive type of approach that needs to be taken into account as well. But for our audience, if you'd like to learn a bit more about the 5C, feel free to reach out to her directly to get more details. We'll be linking her LinkedIn profile as well in the description so you get a bit more details in regards to that.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much. Let's move on. In regards to, as mentioned in the title, we're also looking to touch base as well with the diversity and inclusion aspect when it comes to the leadership development program. But in regards to this, the question being, so if we take numbers, according to McKinsey and Company, companies with diverse executive teams are 25% more likely to achieve above average profitability.
Mm-hmm.
How can organization integrate D&I principle into their leadership development programs
Mm-hmm.
to ensure that new managers are not only effective leaders but
Mm-hmm.
also champion of inclusivity?
Hmm. Very interesting question, looking at the current scenario and the way things are fast changing
Mm-hmm.
in today's
Yeah.
world. A simple thing which inclusion and diversity brings is lots and lots of innovation and creation. But we have to step back and see how these things have got started in an organization. It's not about integrating. First of all, you have to look at, have you chosen a diverse team and trained your future leaders with this diverse team? So if you haven't, stop there itself.
That's valid.
Yeah. Take a step back and first take a diverse team to create your leadership program. That should be your first approach. Now, in my opinion, diversity and inclusion is a fundamental part of creating the training philosophy of any company. Someone becomes a manager in the organization, not the first time that they start hearing about diversity goals, right? They have to walk the talk. How do they walk the talk? They follow leaders who are walking the talk. So it gets integrated inside their day to day work and habits, and then it gets pivoted. Look at Accenture's Julie Sweet, the
Mm-hmm.
CEO. She has aimed that by 2025, Accenture has committed to achieve a gender based or balanced workforce for 2025. How does she achieve it? Under her leadership, she is reflecting in the company's hiring and promotions policy. So when you strategize D&I, then it happens. I have also read the Luther One's webpage for industry leaders to promote diversity. A successful, diverse, and inclusive workplace is one that respects, values, and leverages differences, everyone's presence and perspective.
I love it. And kudos to you, Lukasz Foglar, the writer of this one. I mentioned it to him yesterday. He was having a good laugh. He was like, hey, I wrote
Ah,
that. So
yes.
beautiful, that one. And a very good example, and fingers crossed as well for Accenture. I think the goal is, I think more companies should go in that direction as well in regards
Yeah,
to that.
you write things with intent and you
Yeah.
see things happen in action, then intent and action makes for impact to happen.
Yeah, definitely. I feel that there should be more examples such as that one that should be shining out to be shared on LinkedIn as well, because on top of that, with the new generation that we're facing today, which has a different workforce approach and a different mentality towards work, diversity and inclusion is something even more crucial now with the mentality of our employees that are going in that direction as well. So we need to listen and take that into account as well when looking at leadership development programs. Definitely. Thank you. So let's kind of look into the final points, which I think is the most important for any leaders, the self-awareness aspect. With the question being, studies have shown that self-aware leaders are more effective and better performers. You're strong advocates for creating self-aware individuals through coaching. How does self-awareness contribute to effective leadership? On what strategies do you recommend for fostering this quality in new managers?
Hmm. I have a very interesting comparison of being self aware. Self aware is like learning how to breathe properly. We say that we lead a good life when we know how to breathe in and breathe out properly.
I love that.
So, when we are becoming a manager and when we are progressing towards leading team, the more self aware we are about the steps which we have to consciously take, which empowers us and which empowers everyone else, is the strategy towards successful managers. Now, how I do that? First of all, I always tell every leader who wants to bring in self awareness within themselves or within their team that do personality evaluation. Take the first step by using any of the tools, which is personality and strength tools. There are many today in the industry. There is Gallup Strength Finder, there is MBTI, there is Big Five personality traits.
Mm-hmm.
There are many such tools which are free or at a minimal cost available for companies and organizations to take. There are experts who do that. I'm an MBTI expert. I can always help people with that. Once the framework is specified and you have a report from a strength finder, then you can do individual and group coaching. You can foster an environment with courage, empathetic leadership, and you can nurture and train the growth mindset. Be transparent about all the future plans you have about your organization and help these self aware individuals to align their goals to those goals. So they are already self aware, they know what to do, but they don't have the idea of what is going to happen. Then, how do they align themselves? So, if you're a leader who wants self aware individual, equip them too. So, I definitely love creating self-aware individual, but a self-aware individual gets nurtured in an environment which is transparent, honest, and empowered.
Beautiful. I can only agree to that statement. It's very nicely brought up. Well, let's kind of finish it off on this beautiful podcast in regards to one last question, which is going to be directly towards you and your experience, and
Mhm.
therefore that leadership aspect, understanding that aspect of leadership that you have and that you have seen from your extensive experience at KPMG and Great Learning. What are some of the best practice you've observed in supporting new managers? Are there specific initiative or program that stood out into you in terms of their effectiveness in developing strong and inclusive leaders?
Two companies which are super close to my heart.
Mhm.
When you have a 17 years of experience and out of that 9 years are in one company, then that company automatically gets very close to your heart. So KPMG in that sense has kind of built my career in becoming a human resources leader what I am today. But the best part about KPMG, and here is where I'll bring the leadership concept of KPMG, is KPMG always gave the environment of nurturing and support and a lot of empathy. So anyone who is getting promoted for any designation, they always had support from their current managers that we have your back even if something happens. So when that kind of nurturing environment is there, you become a go-getter with a fallback option. You know that you have people who have experience who can help you guide in case you fail. So when there are chances of failure which are less, you just take better risks. And you take better risks, you create bigger change. You create bigger change, the impact is more. So it's, a cycle which makes such happy people and content. So for example, just me, and I became a manager. That word itself, I really feel that is kind of a little redundant in today's context, manager, but still it is used widely. So when I became a manager, it was the first time in KPMG, and I remember I was a high performer ready to go on my maternity break. So I went with a lot of doubt that I worked so well, I'm a high performer, but now I'm going on my break, so I will not get it. I get a call right after the promotion announcement that Sriparna, you got promoted. And I still get goosebumps, like thinking about that moment and the kind of empowerment it gave me to come back to the workforce, dabbling with a little baby, but very focused that the company has my back. And it promoted me when I was not there and gave me credit for the work I did.
Beautiful.
So all the leadership development program in KPMG have mock interviews, mock drills, proper leadership centers, and then leadership management frameworks. Great Learning was a little different. It was a startup. It was a place where they were nurturing product at first, and people practices were on paper, but it was not functioning at the level of people management policies which someone will like to do. So that was a challenge which I took up. And when I jumped into the company was around 200, 250 people. By the time I left, it was around 2,000 people. So there was a mammoth of leadership development practices which had to be integrated with fast growth. Now, if you see fast growth, there are two things which happens with fast growth. It gives a great growth trajectory to managers, so they really advance in their career very fast. But it also has a flip side of not being able to give a very happy atmosphere for the team, and constant motivation is a struggle. So the managers can get burnt out. So during COVID times, Great Learning really did very well. And when the managers came back post-COVID, there was a lot of training and support which was given around unconscious bias. There was a lot of training given around right amount of feedback. There was a lot of training given around overall essentials of management. So these would be the best practices which I will say that are very, very helpful. But overall, I will say that any organization, small or big, and any phase of growth, it needs support to be given to their people to create a sustainable and successful business. You can't expect your senior leaders to keep guiding the whole company all the time. It's a mammoth work. When will they focus on revenue if they keep focusing on day-to-day betterment of their people? Hence, policies and strategies have to be created to identify, train, and nurture the middle rung of leaders. These are your future leaders. These are the people who will walk the talk tomorrow. These are the people who will take your brand to the next level. So go for it and create new managers with training, support, and a lot of love.
Lovely. Thank you so very much. Beautiful answer. Well, first of all, thank you so very much for joining us on this video podcast. It's been a pleasure discussing about this important topic, and there's much more to come out of this topic also because we have a podcast specifically on Asian community in the USA when it comes to leadership roles. So for our guests, stay tuned for future video podcasts. A big thank you to our little live audience as well that we have here.
Oh, yes.
Cheers.
We have to clap for them.
Our
Thank you
first
so much.
live video podcast. So hope you enjoy this new type of format. Feel free to give us a little comment, what you think about it. And yeah, we'll be in touch. But yeah, take care, guys. Thank you very much. Cheers.